All right, so now let's take you to Capitol Hill, where a showdown is looming between both chambers over the annual defense bill. The Senate last night passed its own version of the NDAA, but left out a series of amendments in the House bill, which was pushed by hardline conservatives, including rescinding travel costs for military members who want to seek abortions. So CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion is standing by. Nikole, I want to get into the NDAA, but first I want to ask about something else. There are, new questions being raised now about the age and health of some of our lawmakers. And this is happening after Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell sort of froze mid-sentence during a press briefing earlier in the week. And of course, there have been ongoing questions about Senator Feinstein after she was gone for months when she was trying to recover from shingles, I believe. What are some of the concerns that you're hearing? How are senators responding?
Well, I think senators overall are trying to give both of these senators their respective space. I talked to one Republican lawmaker yesterday who, pointed out when it comes to this issue of age and public service, people really operate at different paces. People recover differently from different ailments. People age differently. So, I think the general consensus in talking to both Democrats and Republicans around this issue is to really, give these members their space as they work through whatever health challenges they may have. In the case of Leader McConnell, he is standing firm that he is going to serve out his full term, that he is still going to continue to serve as leader. And he made that clear in a new statement from his office, which reads, Leader McConnell appreciates the continued support of his colleagues and plans to serve his full term in the job they overwhelmingly elected him to do. Of course, there have been a lot of questions raised about leadership. And, in talking to a lot of Republican senators, particularly Thursday, most Republican senators, by and large, said they do have confidence in the leader's ability to serve. They think that speculating about who should potentially come after him is premature. But clearly his office trying to tamp that down with that statement, which they first provided to Politico and shared with other outlets like CBS News. In the case of Dianne Feinstein, of course, there was this moment during the Senate Appropriations Committee yesterday as they were marking up and voting on various bills where she appeared to get confused about a vote to the point where one of her aides had to whisper in her ear, just say aye, just say aye, in other words, vote yes. And the senator finally said aye. But her office is also explaining that by saying, the meeting was quite chaotic as they were trying to wrap up their work before the August recess, and said that the senator was preoccupied, didn't realize debate had just ended and a vote was called. She started to give a statement, was informed it was a vote, and then cast her vote. So we do know that Senator Feinstein, of course, has pared back her schedule just a little bit since her return a couple of months ago. She is 90, and she did announce her retirement earlier this year. So there is already plenty of jockeying, as you very well know, in California for her Senate seat, which, of course, will come up next year.
All right, so let's talk about this defense spending bill. The Senate passed the bill, bipartisan support, but didn't include a rash of amendments that the House passed along party lines. So now, these two bills have to start to look like each other if we're going to get a final passage. What's the possibility of compromise?
Yeah, well, that is the big question, and that is going to be key because these bills are quite different in their scope. I mean, at the end of the day, they do aim to fund the Pentagon. The bill is about $886 billion in total, but there are some key differences. As you can see in the House bill, there was some reduction in Ukraine funding. There were some restrictions with respect to the Pentagon's policy around abortion, also around the Pentagon's policies around DEI, transgender medical care. Those elements weren't as much part of this Senate bill, which is why now trying to reconcile this could really be a challenge. We do know that, of course, the process here on the Hill is that both sides, the House and the Senate, have to come to conference in a conference committee. We know on the House side, for instance, Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of those members who will serve on this committee. She has made clear she does not want Ukraine funding in this bill. Of course, many Senate Republicans have pushed for that funding and even pushed for a potential supplemental. So that is one area, of course, where we may see some differences. And again, some of these more contentious restrictions around abortion and DEI could cause some issues for those on the Senate when it comes time to reconcile this bill in full.
And so let's talk about Congress is actually going to be heading into their August recess, so they're going to be gone for like a month. They haven't passed their annual spending bill. We know this is going to be a rough one, not necessarily between Democrats and Republicans trying to determine, what the government needs to keep running, but between Republicans, particularly in the House. I suspect we're going to see, those divisions that we saw before when it came to government spending. Are people concerned about a government shutdown?
Absolutely. I mean, look, it's kind of like this NDAA bill that we just discussed. I mean, there is a lot that has to be reconciled both in what's happening in the House and in the Senate. In the Senate, they've been able to make more progress on their appropriations bills in terms of moving them through committee and getting them ready to tee up. In the House side, it's been a little more challenging. In fact, the House left a little early yesterday because they couldn't clear one of their funding bills. And so, as you know, Congress has to pass 12 appropriation bills. In the House, they've only gone through one of those bills, which means when they come back in September, they're going to have to get through the rest of those 11. And once again, there are kind of some of these same issues where House Republicans in particular are trying to tuck in provisions to roll back, for instance, abortion, provisions related around abortion access, more provisions around the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. They are trying to tuck provisions into some of these funding bills to restrict funding, roll back policies and the like, just like they did with the NDAA. So that is what will make things even more contentious, on top of the fact that House Republicans, many of them more conservatives, want to roll back funding in the sense of passing appropriations bills at lower spending levels, lower than what was agreed to in that big debt ceiling deal that we saw emerge this past spring. And so that is really where the biggest difference is going to be. Obviously, many lawmakers in the Senate believe that they should hew as closely to that deal as possible, since that was what was agreed to on all sides. But many House Republicans say, no, we want to cut funding more. And so, again, you're going to see both sides really at loggerheads, I think, when they come back this September, and they're not going to have much time to work things out. They have to resolve all of this by September 30th. Otherwise, we could be facing a government shutdown.
Listen, before I let you go, I got to ask you about something else. I mean, it seems like a bit of a sideshow, but people are talking about it. Republican Congressman Derek Van Orden, he's in a little bit of hot water because he reportedly cursed out a group of teenage Senate pages on the Hill. What is that about?
Well, we're still trying to get to the bottom of this, but it was kind of a bizarre episode here on the Hill. Apparently, there were a group of Senate pages late one night who were taking pictures in the Capitol Rotunda. Of course, that's kind of like the piece de resistance of the Capitol for anyone who's been here in terms of looking up at the interior sections of the dome. So it appears these pages were taking pictures, but because they were on the ground, Van Orden happened to be at the Capitol late that night, walked by and cursed at them, telling them to get up. And so it really hasn't sat well, particularly with those here in the Senate. Both Leader Schumer and McConnell weighed in on this and did not think that that behavior was appropriate. There are some questions around Van Orden and what may have caused him to be so upset in that moment. So this is certainly something that is likely to continue, even though lawmakers are breaking for their August recess.
Yeah, we can't repeat what he said, but we'll just say it's very colorful language.
Very colorful language, yeah.
All right, Nikole.
And there's some questions about what he was doing prior to making those colorful statements. So again, as I said, to be continued.
I may have to email you separately on that. Nikole, thank you very much. I want to know.